And here we go.
Sports!
I listen to you guys all the time.
It's awesome.
I'm in the mood for one of your classic anecdotes.
Give yourselves a round of applause. All right, that's enough.
Hey guys, there is someone I want you to meet.
Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun on Off the Hook Sports. Represented by T. Scott Jones. BanksandJones.com. Tennessee from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studio. East Tennessee's #1 volume and customer service dealer. Ted Russell Ford and TedRussellLincoln.net.
I mean, look, we're all part of the same team here.
Now to the Dave Hooker Show on Off the Hook Sports.
Welcome. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, BanksandJones.com, as we broadcast from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studios. A lot to get to. Tennessee has a new commitment on board as we range from news to Tennessee fans to news to beyond Tennessee fans. We don't talk a lot of serious stuff, but a serious topic that will come up a little bit later. ISIS targeted an SEC football stadium. So we'll dig into that. Are you concerned when you go to what many would consider a soft target? Also, coming up, why I think that the University of Tennessee, if they decided to, could hire a fantastic coach to replace Josh Heupel. Not that we're talking about Josh Heupel leaving, but let's say he goes to Oklahoma. I just want to talk about the lay of the land, so to speak, as it compares to previous years, in which, let's face it, Jeremy Pruitt was not on top of any coaching search list. That's just a fact. So Tennessee has had to settle since a guy named Lane Kiffin, and we'll get into that. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, BanksandJones.com, as there is a lot to get to. All right. Excuse me. Let's go ahead and dig into Tennessee's newest commitment. Today's tough question brought to you by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, BanksandJones.com. How much value does a 3-star prospect bring to the University of Tennessee's 2026 class? First class, Caleb Calhoun. How are you, sir?
I'm good. How are you doing, Dave?
Never better. A lot to get to on the program. Tell us about Tennessee's newest commitment, Caleb.
Tennessee picked up a commitment from Bergen County, New Jersey. For those who don't know, that's right outside of New York. It's Montville, New Jersey, to be specific. KJ McClain, a safety who is a 3-star across the board out of St. Joseph's High School. He is largely a 3-star because of the fact that he's a little slim, only about 165 pounds. That's a concern. And also, while he likes to play tough and physical, his tackling habits are bad. So that's a concern with people. So the question is he physical enough to be able to tackle in certain situations? As far as a coverage guy, though, he's incredible, and there's no debates about that. If you look at his tape, very good at recovering, very good at he's very good at breaking on routes after receivers break on the routes. That's one of his biggest skills because he moves so quickly and he knows how to turn with his hips. So he'd be an ideal Nick Saban defensive back, honestly. And he is very versatile. He plays safety at the high school level, but according to Willie Martinez and people like that, he is being looked at as a guy who can just be a utility defensive back at Tennessee. So there are a lot of big advantages to him coming, even though he's just a 3-star. And I think this is partially part of Josh Heupel's way of doing things, where they try to, again, he's missed on a lot of guys, but my understanding with the way Tennessee operates is they try to evaluate talent before anybody else does. And this guy was starting to pick up offers. Michigan State came calling. Penn State came calling. West Virginia came calling. Tennessee was the only school from the South that had come calling to this point. But I think part of the way Tennessee is building their program is to take some of those guys that maybe the SEC hasn't noticed yet that are outside of Southern football country that are really underrated prospects and try to catch on to them before anybody else does. And I think they're trying to do, they think they've done that with KJ McClain here.
All right, let's talk KJ McClain for a second. Let's talk Tennessee football recruiting. Today's tough question. Ultimately, we know that Tennessee will be defined as recruiting. Please hit that like and subscribe button, and we'll go to your comments. What do you think of KJ McClain? But more so, what do you think of Tennessee football recruiting under Josh Heupel? Is it satisfactory, unsatisfactory? I tend to think it's been pretty good, especially considering the mess that Jeremy Pruitt left the Vols in, especially off the field as much as on the field. So let's dive into this. Let's come up with 4 qualifiers. Tennessee football recruiting under Josh Heupel has been great, good, average, not good enough. Along those lines. We'll put it on the YouTube channel. That's our poll question. Today's tough question as well. We broadcast live from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studios. Today's tough question brought to you by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com.
Today's tough question. Boom. You heard that. Now take it. The Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun. Represented by T. Scott Jones, banksandjones.com, Tennessee's trial attorney. From the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studio, East Tennessee's #1 volume and customer service dealer, Ted Russell Ford and TedRussellLincoln.net. Now to the Dave Hooker Show on Off the Hook Sports.
All right, Caleb, given our 4 choices, where would you put Tennessee football recruiting under Josh Heupel?
I'm going to say good. I'm not going to say great. I think recruiting under Josh Heupel has been good. I mean, they've only nailed 1 top 10 class since Josh Heupel's been at Tennessee, and that was after the 2022 season. And the person to make that a top 10 class was Nico Iamaleava, and he's no longer in the program. So I can't say that they've actually ever had a top 10 caliber class under Josh Heupel to this point to make up this roster. But in the age of the transfer portal, and in the age of keeping players around and trying to build chemistry, it's not as crucial to have top 10 classes as it used to be, provided you maintain a certain level of stability and get the right talent to address needs in the transfer portal. And I think Josh Heupel's done that to a much better, much higher degree than a lot of other coaches. And so a lot of the recruiting aspect is getting a guy like KJ McClain, who you think you can develop within your program under a guy like Tim Banks, and then then he'll stay around. And so you won't have to worry as much about finding more talent and bringing somebody in. I think this is the type of recruiting they want to be able to do at Tennessee. Now we're way out for the 2026 recruiting class, and Tennessee is right now, just so people know, they have a 5-star already committed, but they're number 30 on the 247 Sports composite. But anybody who's followed recruiting, particularly nowadays, you can't rank classes in June. It's just not a thing you can do.
No, it'll change drastically in the next 6 weeks because July has become a big recruiting month. Tennessee with several big camps planned for the following month. Pseudo Sham says we need some good utility guys that will be good but not great, maybe stick around a few years. Maybe, but given the choices, I'm going to say not good enough. Not good enough if you want a championship, because Tennessee, to compete with the Georgias of the world, the Ohio States of the world, has to recruit at least at a top 5 level. And they haven't done that. As you mentioned, just 1 top 10 class. I'm sorry, that's not good enough. And if you fast forward to 3 years from now, you're going to see a Tennessee football team that does about the same thing, that flirts with the college football playoff, that maybe gets in it as Tennessee did last year. And last year was a fantastic season. Don't get me wrong. But you got in the college football playoff and you look like you weren't supposed to be there against an Ohio State team that was far more talented. Is that where Tennessee football wants to be in 3 years? Are you okay with that? I don't think so. And Pseudo Sham with a bit of a correction. You need top 5 players. Don't get me wrong. Yeah. I mean, listen, Nico was highly rated, second best in the nation. Tennessee landed him, and I give them credit for that. I'm not going to knock them because Nico left. That was there were a lot of extenuating circumstances in that, Caleb. But I will say this: they landed him. Kudos for that. But you need about 2 or 3 or 4 of those 5-star guys. Tennessee's not getting that. They're not getting 3 or 4 5-star guys. They seem lucky to get 1. And you, as Tennessee fans, celebrate. And I appreciate that. And we thought Nico would be a watershed prospect, didn't we, Caleb?
We did.
to more 5-star prospects. But did it really?
Well, again, are you talking about unanimous 5-star prospects though, or can you count 2 or 3 if you get like a prospect who's maybe a 5-star on one service and a 4-star on another, but like a fringe 5-star? Or do you need 3 to 4 unanimous 5-star prospects?
I'm not going to split hairs with you, but I mean, let's take it. Why don't you pull up, if you can, Tennessee's signing class last year,
2025.
Yeah. And then pull up Georgia's signing class last year and count up the number of 5-star prospects that both teams had, and then take it a step further. Count up the number of 4-star prospects that each team had. So today's tough question, and it is pretty simple. It's on our YouTube page, so go ahead and vote now. Tennessee recruiting under Josh Heupel has been great, good, average, not good enough. Nobody has voted for not good enough yet. That's where I am. Am I being too critical? Hit like and subscribe. Get on board now with your comments. David Michael says, nobody looked like they should be in the college football playoff versus Ohio State. Bit of defense for Tennessee. Yeah, if you want to go in that direction, that's fine. But, man, to me, there's a bit of an issue going on in terms of recruiting. And we already got a comment about Tennessee's broke. Maybe they're broke, but you at some point now, especially that there's a salary cap, and I understand NIL is going to be outside of that, you have to be able to take that a step further. You have to offer something else.
Well,
No, I don't care if it's prep for the NFL or if it's a 5-star hostess. I don't care. You have to do something. It's not good enough, guys. It's just not. Today's tough question brought to you by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney.
Why Banks & Jones? Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks & Jones. T. Scott Jones. BanksandJones.com.
And I'm starting to hear the same old. Thank you, Travis says, how dare you hit us with facts. I'm hearing this develop players, and Caleb, you even felt you were guilty of that this morning. And listen, developing players, offering players early, that's something that Josh Heupel had to do. The fact that you're going into year number 5 and you're still having to do that is disturbing to me. So tell me, Georgia last year, how many 5-star prospects did they sign in the 2025 class?
Georgia signed 4, Tennessee signed 1. Now, 4 stars, Georgia signed 15, Tennessee signed 14.
Okay, that's comparable. That's a good defense of Josh Heupel. I can roll with that. Pseudo-Sham, I'm not rolling with this. We need more guys to make that next jump. We're close to breaking out, but need just a few more players to be top-tier players. No, you need the Cozy Colemans, the Deion Grants, and the Jamal Lewises of the world that are fantastic players when they walk in the door.
All right, there's an issue here, Dave, though, and you're forgetting this because, look, here's the dirty little secret with Tennessee. I think we both agree they're not where we thought they were in NIL. We thought they were going to lap the field in NIL, right? Back in the day, they were going to have the money advantage, and they don't. Now,
supposedly, I look at that in retrospect, and I think it's just because they happen to have a coaching change at about the same time that happened. So there was a sense of optimism. Go ahead.
Okay, so they don't have the NIL advantage. Dave, what you're saying, I'm just going to tell you this up front. If what you're saying is true, Tennessee's always going to be mid-tier because the truth of the matter is it goes back to old school recruiting and talent within the state. And let's just call it what it is. All things being equal, what I mean is Georgia doesn't have Ray Goff as head coach. Tennessee can't touch Georgia in recruiting. Georgia would absolutely lap Tennessee in recruiting every year. There's more talent in Georgia than Tennessee, significantly more. And it's not changing anytime soon. You know, for the next 50 years, Georgia's going to have better high school football talent than Tennessee. And they will have backups. I mean, Georgia is always going to have 2 times as much NFL talent as Tennessee is in high school talent. Tennessee got Cozy Coleman, Deion Grant, and Jamal Lewis because Ray Golf was at Georgia, and Ray Golf stupidly didn't even recruit Jamal Lewis. That's not going to happen.
Yeah, went with Jasper Sanks instead. I'll go ahead and tell you though. I think you're making excuses. Bender of Strings says Heupel recruits like he has no urgency. It's one thing to not be active in the portal if you're consistently recruiting top 5, but when you're struggling to crack the top 10, where is the urgency? I think there's some truth to that. I think the Tennessee fans may be settling a little bit. Are you okay with just getting into the college football playoff? I don't think you should be. And listen, Kirby Smart would be a fantastic recruiter if he was at Utah State. Now, he wouldn't have the in-state talent. I get that. But I just have a real question about recruiting and the fact that we're lauding a 3-star prospect out of New Jersey. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Derek is absolutely right. The state of Florida can't contain them all. How many prospects did Tennessee sign out of the state of Florida last year? I don't see enough urgency there. I don't see enough attention there. Now, the simple fact is Tennessee in-state is going to be second tier, but you don't have to be second tier in recruiting. And Philip Fulmer proved that. The only reason that Tennessee slipped under Philip Fulmer is he lost his edge a little bit. He won a couple of championships. He played for another one. He thought he had things taken care of. And we've probably all been in that situation where we've gotten a little complacent. Maybe that'll happen to Kirby Smart. I kind of doubt it, but I'm not going to go so far as to agree with Ben. Butch Jones recruiting was 10,000 times better than now. I'm not going to go that far, Ben, but I'm going to tell you this. It feels similar.
Okay, there's a couple of things. One, Fulmer didn't slip. Mark Richt went to Georgia. The minute Georgia gets a competent coach, they're always going to out-recruit Tennessee until perpetuity. Philip Fulmer benefited, Dave. Let's be honest. He benefited from Ray Golf being at Georgia and from Jim Donnan being at Georgia.
Well, and Brad Scott being at South Carolina or whatever goofball they had there. But no,
I mean, it's not a coincidence that I'm sorry, it's just not a coincidence that Fulmer's last SEC title was 98. Lou Holtz went to South Carolina in 99. Mark Richt was at Georgia in 2001. 2001 was the last year Fulmer finished in the top 10. That's really not a coincidence to me at all.
There's no question in my mind that Philip Fulmer could go toe-to-toe with Kirby Smart in recruiting. And when I say toe-to-toe, maybe Georgia has the number 1 or 2 class in the nation, and Tennessee has the number 5 class in the nation.
I don't think it's possible without another factor involved, i.e. a coach that everybody wants to play for. Again, my point is Heupel's selling point needs to be the video game numbers. He's got to scout talent that's to a lesser degree, because I don't think it's possible. I'm just going to say this, guys. I think oftentimes there's a bit of an outsized view of Tennessee's ability to recruit. I think Tennessee, if all programs are where they should be, can't go toe-to-toe with Alabama, Georgia, Florida, LSU, Ohio State. Those 5, they can't hang with. And I would say that when you take that into account, I think that the best way, you got to find something else. I scout talent that's not as highly touted in places that people don't realize. Guys, in the era of integration, Tennessee has national.
That's like me saying I'm big boned. I'm sorry. I can't go there. I'm not fat. I'm big boned.
No, Tennessee, I'm sorry, but in the era of integration, Tennessee has 1 national title. Clemson has 3. I mean, we got to be honest on this.
Okay. You can't out-recruit Clemson. You can't out-recruit Florida right now.
No, I don't think you can out-recruit Florida.
With the coach they have in detail-oriented Billy Napier,
I think
where was Florida last year in recruiting?
Florida last year in recruiting was, let's see, 247 Sports Composite recruiting rankings.
While you're looking that up, Derek says, I went back and looked at rosters from the 90s to the early 2000s. We had plenty of in-state talent of contributors. California player hits Atlanta, North Carolina, South Carolina, D.C. area, and down the Virginia coast, northern Alabama. Few Florida hits.
Florida was number...
That's a good point by Derek. It's true. Go ahead.
Florida was number 7. They were ahead of Tennessee in recruiting last year. I mean, you
can't beat Florida with Billy Napier.
I've always said this, and I'm going to double down on this. The ability of a coach to recruit is one of the most overrated things we talk about with programs. Programs are half the recruiting battle. Coaches are one half. but programs are the other half. Florida right now is the only SEC school. They're the only Power 2 school. All right, let's back up for a minute, Dave. You agree there's no longer a Power 5 or a Power 4. There's a Power 2, right? It's SEC and Big 10, and then Florida State and the Big 12 and the ACC are like a tier below, right?
Agreed.
Florida's the only Power 2 school in the best recruiting state in the country. I mean, yeah, getting a number 7 class is them underachieving for Billy Napier. Florida should be waking up and getting number 1 recruiting classes every year now, because they should be destroying. I think Florida out recruits Miami for Miami talent now, if I'm being honest with you. And so with that in mind, yeah, Florida, it's again, Florida, Georgia, LSU, Alabama, Ohio State. When all those programs are where they need to be, Tennessee just can't hang with them in recruiting. They can't. And so Tennessee's in the next tier with like Michigan. And I would say Tennessee's in a tier with like Michigan, Penn State, Auburn, and kind of around that area.
Recruiting sells, right? It's just sales. By the way, Ben says Heupel has time, but our fan base is going to be full and rest in about 2 or 3 years. I'm going to go ahead and tell you, Ben, the next 2 or 3 years are going to be determined in the next 6 weeks in recruiting. And I will say this, recruiting is all about sales. So I was I was in line to get a cup of coffee, and I see the Knoxville News Sentinel. And let me just go ahead and tell you, nobody reads the Knoxville News Sentinel in its hard copy form anymore. They've cut back on circulation. I think it's like $2.50 now. When's the last time you bought a real paper?
I subscribe monthly to all of mine online. Yeah, it's been a long time.
Okay. So I'm thinking to myself, man, a really good salesperson got that ad on the top of the front page for the Knoxville News Sentinel. A really good salesperson did that. And Travis, I'm totally on board with you. He says, this is the year we find out what Heupel is made of. I completely agree. I think that's why he hired Marion Hobby, to show that he had an NFL background, that he could prepare you for the NFL. I think that was a very good move. I think he has the college football playoff as a backdrop. And I wonder if the Nico thing is a drag. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But ultimately, yes, if Tennessee doesn't have a top 5 class this season, I think you've got real cause for concern.
I think they have to find other ways beyond getting a top 5 class out of high school. I don't think it's possible. I mean, Alabama's got a great coach in Kalen DeBoer. Georgia is rolling right now. Florida is Florida, and I don't care if Billy Napier's there or not. It's the same with LSU and Ohio State. Again, unless Georgia or Alabama's down, neither are. I don't think there's a path to a top 5 class for Tennessee. And by the way, that doesn't mean they can't win big. They have to scout talent no one else has. They have to scheme better. That you can overcome that. Tennessee's not a top 5 recruiting program in the nation, and never was.
It was under Philip Fulmer.
No,
heyday.
Georgia was a better recruiting program. They just had dumb coaches. Tennessee can only recruit top 5 consistently if Ray Goff is at Georgia.
All right. New poll question on the YouTube page: is Caleb Calhoun making excuses for Josh Heupel? Ben says it's like building a house with no foundation and then using your amazing building skills to build a house. It doesn't work. Thank you, Ben.
Well, that's the point.
Now, let me give you the answer. You ready for the answer?
Yes.
The transfer portal. Now, that is the one thing that I'll throw out there that Tennessee could excel in. And if they do, it pulls their rear out of the fire in terms of not being an elite recruiting school. Short of that, they better be in the top 5, or you're not getting past the first round of the playoffs, and you're probably not making the playoffs more than a year out of every handful of seasons.
Well, wait a minute. You have to be top 5 to make a playoff of a top 16? Come on. No, to make a playoff, you need to be top 16, probably top 15 in recruiting. I mean,
if you're in the SEC, you better be in the top 5, because you're going to have to go toe-to-toe with Georgia, Alabama, Florida, and LSU.
In a 5+11 model, there will be 7 SEC teams making it year in and year out.
Okay. A serious new poll question. I was giving you a hard time, but let's throw this out there. Are you okay with Tennessee just making the college football playoff, or does it take more? You think of a way to word that, Caleb, while I set up our next topic. I wrote a column on this. It's on offthehooksports.com. And we talked about this yesterday briefly. I want to dive into it a little bit, because Alabama was able to tab Kalen DeBoer as its next head coach at Washington. How long did that coaching hire take? I think about 22 hours. It didn't take long at all because Alabama had a backdrop of success. They didn't have an NCAA issue as they've had in the past and as Tennessee's had in the past. So the University of Tennessee, if Josh Heupel, and this comes up because Chris Lowe of ESPN discussed his potentially going to Oklahoma on 104.5. So if Josh Heupel decided to do that, he had elite success and Oklahoma comes calling, or Tennessee had to go in another direction because, I don't know, the recruiting wasn't good enough. Can Tennessee just point at who they want and go get them? Because they haven't been able to do that since Lane Kiffin. When Tennessee fired Philip Fulmer during the season, there was a reason. Mike Hamilton, then athletic director, the late Mike Hamilton, rest his soul, he looked at Lane Kiffin and said, that's my guy. I don't care what happened at Oakland. That's my guy. Offensive coach, ahead of the curve. That's my guy. Young guy, infuses us with energy. And Kiffin did all that. Now, I don't think anybody knew that he would be wild as a buck and they would have to put an administrator in the football office, literally, David Blackburn, who was the athletic director at the University of Tennessee, Chattanooga. I don't know if you know this, but he essentially got demoted because Kiffin's coaching staff was so wild. He got moved from the office to back to the football department to watch over those guys. Were you aware of that?
I did not know that, but that's
Yes.
very interesting.
That was because it was so wild. I don't know how many bottles of bourbon were consumed on a Sunday night as they began preparation for the next opponent, but let's just say it was a lot. So that's the last time that the University of Tennessee pointed to a coach, said, that's my guy, and got him. It's the last time, because I can go ahead and tell you, Derek Dooley was not even on the list. He wasn't at the bottom of the list. He wasn't on the list. I can tell you that Butch Jones was a little bit higher and maybe was on the list, but I don't think anybody was salivating over Butch Jones. And Jeremy Pruitt, I mean, good Lord. I mean, that he wasn't even remotely on the list, and he wasn't qualified. That was a bad hire from the jump. So how much better prepared? 4 Downs brought to you by Ted Russell Ford Lincoln, as they're on Parkside Drive and Kingston Pike. They're fantastic. Check them out. And my Jeep is awesome. I can't tell you how great the buying experience was. It was absolutely phenomenal. Ted Russell Ford Lincoln will take care of you. So, Caleb, how much better prepared is the University of Tennessee if they had to replace Josh Heupel, or if Josh Heupel left? How much better prepared are they than the previous 3 coaching hires to go out and hire a coach?
I think they're significantly better, honestly. I think that for a couple of reasons. One, I think that this would be the first time that they would have an athletic director hire the next coach as well, who hired the last one, because outside of Mike Hamilton going from Kiffin to Dooley, and Hamilton wasn't prepared for the Kiffin departure, you had a different athletic director hire each head coach. Hamilton hired Dooley, Dave Hart hired Butch, Philip Fulmer hired Pruitt, John Curry tried to hire somebody, but in between then, I think Danny White, his calling card is hiring. I firmly believe Danny White knows every single year 4 coaches he'd like to hire. In case, I mean, we always have this phrase, Dave and I always have this phrase, the breaking news phrase. Dave came up with it, where you call it the Heupel gets hit by a bus phrase, right? Which is like, if there's breaking, like, what do we do if Josh Heupel gets hit by a bus and we got to do breaking news right there in the moment? Do we have a plan? Danny White has a Heupel gets hit by a bus plan, don't you think?
Yes. And I got that from Mike Hamilton.
Okay, so there you go. Who did not have a Kiffin gets hit by a bus plan. So
no, but he had a Fulmer gets hit by a bus plan.
He did.
It was Kiffin.
And it was Kiffin. I think Danny White already has coaches on his. Put it this way: last year, when Kelly Harper was fired, you don't think Danny White already knew he was hiring Kim Caldwell? He already had made that. He had already made that hire before he fired Kelly Harper. And
yeah, I'm curious if you remember how long it took to hire Caldwell.
I don't think it took. I think Harper was fired on Monday and Caldwell was hired on Friday.
No.
And
No, I agree. I didn't think it was long at all. And I guarantee you, he knew. I agree with you. He knew he wanted to hire. You have to reach out and the agents get involved. So it's not always going to be like DeBoer. DeBoer going from Washington to Alabama. I mean, that's a no-brainer.
And Greg Byrne knew. I mean, think about it. I know this much too with Greg Byrne. He was already scouting DeBoer in October of 2023. because he knew there was a possibility of Nick Saban retiring anytime soon. I give Greg Byrne and Alabama so much credit for how they went about the DeBoer hire. So much better handled than every hire Alabama's ever made outside of Nick Saban, the last 30, 40 years. And I think Danny White, if something happened with Heupel, he'd be ready to go immediately afterward.
All right. 4 downs. If Tennessee had to, could they hire these coaches? We picked a myriad of coaches. One who I think Caleb brought up is the top candidate for basically any school if they wanted to go hire someone. Now, we're taking the Kirby Smarts out of the equation because Kirby Smart's not leaving Georgia. He played there. We're taking the Ryan Days out of the equation. He was a longtime assistant coach. He was deemed the golden child before Urban Meyer even left. So we're taking those kind of guys out of the equation. Steve Sarkisian, guys, I know you're a Tennessee fan, but like it or not, that's a better job. It's in a more talent-rich state, and the facilities are pretty equal. So we're taking some of these guys out of the equation. So we've got a hodgepodge of guys. I'm just curious, could Tennessee just simply go out and get them? 4 downs, brought to you by Ted Russell Ford Lincoln, East Tennessee's largest volume dealer.
Come on, guys, it's game time.
4 downs. Can you count? 4 downs. 1, 2, 3, 4. The Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun. Represented by T. Scott Jones. BanksandJones.com. Tennessee's trial attorney. From the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studio, East Tennessee's #1 volume and customer service dealer. Ted Russell Ford and TedRussellLincoln.net. Now to the Dave Hooker Show on Off the Hook Sports.
All right, here we go. We're going to break down some of these names. And we're going to start with Dan Lanning. He is first down. If Josh Heupel went to Oklahoma or went to the Dallas Cowboys, could Tennessee tab Oregon's Dan Lanning and landing him? Could they?
Yes, I think they could. I think they could get Dan Lanning in a heartbeat. Dan Lanning, one, already has Tennessee ties because he was an assistant under Mike Norvell at Memphis in 2016 and 2017. He was a grad assistant at Alabama in 2015, and he coached at Georgia from 2018 to 2021, the defensive coordinator the last 3 years. So he's got immediate direct recruiting ties to the state of Georgia and won a national championship. I think he would love to not have to fly to the South all the time to recruit. I think he'd love to just have to drive a couple hours to recruit high school talent instead of always flying.
I completely agree for all the reasons you just said. Excuse me. That's a great point. Tennessee could land Dan Lanning. And I've been to Oregon. I've been on their campus. It doesn't compare. We're not going to get in a lot of situations here where facilities are a lot different in elite coaches at elite jobs. But this is one situation where the facilities are different. It is a different level, and facilities don't win recruiting battles anymore because everybody has the same old stuff. But in this particular situation, they could. Second down is Kalen DeBoer at Alabama. If Tennessee decided Kalen DeBoer was their next head coach, could they land him? There's no way in God's green creation.
Yes, they could land him. And I'm sorry, you guys. I know everybody thinks I'm crazy for saying it because I just said a little while ago that on everything being equal, Alabama should be a better job than Tennessee. But everything's not equal because Alabama boosters are dumb as a rock. And I've said this before, but this is Greg Byrne is frustrated.
Okay, you're on to something. So the angle, and Greg Byrne has publicly asked for more money from his boosters, which isn't a good look.
Yes.
Okay, so if they played that angle, maybe, but I don't think you're landing DeBoer.
Alabama has a bunch of Jimmy Haslams running the show down there right now who basically say, and they're worse than Tennessee boosters or other boosters with NIL, because if you talk, Alabama fans have this delusion that players who committed to Nick Saban or commit to Alabama, they're committing because they love Alabama football and they want to be a part. They don't think they're committing for the NFL. Now, you and I are not naive, and anybody else who covers Tennessee fans know that players who commit to Josh Heupel are doing it to put up video game numbers or try to get to the NFL. They're not doing it because, they just love the tradition of Tennessee so much. No, players are thinking how they get to the NFL and who gives them money, right? More than anything else. And Alabama thinks that they are such a prestigious program that they genuinely think that people will take discounts to play for Alabama as opposed to Nick Saban.
They do. They absolutely do, because And I think Nick Saban would have run into this problem. I think it's part of the reason he left. I don't think it was because of the negotiations and all that stuff. I just believe that he realized that kids had more leverage and he didn't like that. All right, so let's get to I'm going to disagree. They can't get DeBoer. There's no chance in Hades. Let's get to third down. Let's bring Cooper Mays in here. Cooper, what do you got for us, buddy?
Cooper Mays here. Hit like and subscribe.
Thanks.
Tennessee center Cooper Mays here. Third down.
All right, third down, Deion Sanders. Well, of course they can land Deion Sanders.
Should they? I think
No,
it's worth it.
I shouldn't even be on this list.
I think if Josh Heupel left, look, Deion Sanders, whatever you want to say, if you want to talk about one of the few coaches who can out-recruit the level of his program, Deion Sanders is that. Colorado should not be recruiting the way they're recruiting at all.
Where were they in the 2025 class before we get to fourth down? Brought to you by Cooper Mays.
All SEC center Cooper Mays here. Fourth down.
Their overall rank was number 24. They shouldn't be a top 25 class.
No, that's good for Colorado. I can go with that. Lane Kiffin. Yes, they could go get Lane Kiffin. I know there's no question Lane Kiffin would love to come back to Tennessee.
I would 100% hire Lane Kiffin back tomorrow if Josh Heupel left. I would honestly. I might take.
Let me give you some more realistic examples for a second. I don't like the Sanders and Kiffin thing. I think they could get both of them easily. I'm gonna backtrack a little bit. I don't think they could get Lanning, and I don't think they could get. But
no, you think they could get Lanning, right?
I'm backtracking a little bit on Lanning. It depends. I'm half backtracking. If Josh Heupel left and it was a great situation because he had won, then yes. If Josh Heupel struggled and won 7 games in a season for 2 or 3 straight seasons, then no. I don't think they could. All right, so I'm half backtracking. All right, so what about the guy at Miami? What's his name again?
Mario Cristobal.
Could they call Mario Cristobal? I don't care if they should or shouldn't, but could they call Mario Cristobal at the University of Miami? Most would consider that a lesser program compared to the University of Tennessee in terms of heritage. I know what they did in the 80s and the 90s and what they did in the 2000s. I'm aware of the championships, but the bottom line is they don't have, a Schnellenberger doesn't compare to a Nealon in terms of heritage and in terms of fan support. They don't have that. Could they call Mario Cristobal and land him? I think he's a good determining factor here.
If Miami can somehow get out of the ACC and into the SEC, no chance. No chance. Because Miami in the SEC is a better job than Tennessee in the SEC, significantly so. But
here's another good one. Go ahead.
Mario Cristobal might leave Miami because Miami is so behind in funding because they're stuck in the ACC. But he's from Miami. Like, he was born and raised in South Florida, I believe. Isn't he, he is of Cuban descent, right? Isn't he? So he's, very connected to the community in Miami. He played at Miami. I don't think there's any way Mario Cristobal would want to leave Miami.
James, good job, Ben. Good job, Ben. James Franklin's a good one. James Franklin. Could you call James Franklin, who has Tennessee ties, and pry him away from Penn State, which has every bit as much heritage as the University of Tennessee and maybe more?
You could pry James Franklin away from Penn State. You could pry him away from Penn State. I think he prefers living in Tennessee. I think he's fought some battles at Penn State that he doesn't want to have to fight, if I'm being honest. I'm not saying it's certain, but I think it's possible.
Okay.
So, but it
seems really tied to that program, but I do like the James Franklin thought. That's a guy who, listen, Pennsylvania is limited in terms of recruiting talent. Penn State had the backdrop of the Paterno scandal and the Sandusky thing. James Franklin's done a great job there, and I didn't think he would. And James Franklin also sees the big picture. That's why he's scheduled so weak at Vanderbilt. So could you pry away James Franklin? Yeah. I think if things are going well at Tennessee, you probably could. Yes.
Because I'm seeing some people, there are rumors that James Franklin once turned down Tennessee. Tennessee's not the same program it was when it tried to hire coaches after Butch Jones. It's not the same. A lot of coaches were scared away. And you know this because you covered the coaching search that Derek Dooley was hired. How many coaches are like, I don't want to touch that. It's in chaos right now, the situation it's in.
A lot. Bender of String says Lance Leipold at Kansas. Lord, if they couldn't land a coach at the University of Kansas, I'd be absolutely Stunned.
Danny
So-
White discovered Lance Leopold. Funny
What's
enough. Danny White's the one who discovered Lance Leopold, of all people.
Would that be Tennessee's next head coach if Josh Heupel were hired by the Dallas Cowboys? I think it probably would.
Danny White, let's be honest, he likes to make hires that aren't splash hires but work out really well, doesn't he? Because he likes to get all the credit. A little arrogant.
All right. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. Coming up, it will be this day in Tennessee sports history. And Nico Iamaleava. Will he always be held back if he doesn't fire his agent? That's going to be a bank on it, brought to you by Commercial Bank. I want to dig into that for a second. Stay tuned. Give me 2 minutes with Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker.
Why Banks & Jones? Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks & Jones. T. Scott Jones. banksandjones.com.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Newbert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Newbert Collision Center.
Community banking is about location and much more. It's about family. We reside in your community. We are a part of your community. At Commercial Bank, our commitment extends beyond the walls of our branches. It's displayed each day in the opportunities we provide, the money we give back, and the time we commit, all to help improve the lives of the people, families, and businesses that make our communities great. Commercial Bank, life made better.
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
Dare to compare.
Are you ready to get strong? At NFC, we offer top-notch weight training and functional fitness, so you can build strength and improve your performance. Join today at nfc1.com or stop by any one of our 7 East Tennessee locations.
Your power, the Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun, represented by T. Scott Jones, banksandjones.com, Tennessee's trial attorney. From the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studio, East Tennessee's #1 volume and customer service dealer, Ted Russell Ford and TedRussellLincoln.net. Now to the Dave Hooker Show on Off the Hook Sports.
Derek says, regardless of how this turns out for Heupel, I'm content and appreciative for what he's done here. Yeah, that's fine. But are you appreciative for somebody that comes in and builds the foundation or somebody that builds the whole house? I think you want somebody that builds the whole house. And there's a debate ongoing about Lane Kiffin. Would you take him over Josh Heupel? Let's talk about that. I'm curious where Caleb leans, but I'm going to save that for tomorrow. I think at the very least, Josh Heupel has proven that he is a foundation builder. But is he building the whole house? I don't know. Ben says, let's be honest, though. If Heupel goes 6-6 next year, is he going to get a pass? I just don't understand. I don't care if quarterback situation. I don't care. I just don't get that. I don't get that. It'll be Bank on It, brought to you by Commercial Bank. I'm going to call a bit of an audible here. Caleb is Bank on It, brought to you by Commercial Bank. Kiffin gets a pass this year because of the Nico situation. Yay or nay? Put it on the YouTube page and let's go. I'm sorry, Heupel. Did I say Kiffin?
Yeah, you said
Let's
Kiffin.
start again. Bank on It, brought to you by Commercial Bank. Josh Heupel gets a pass because of the quarterback situation this year, regardless of what happens. Yes or no? That simple. I think yes, he does. No, he shouldn't.
I'm going to say yes, he does. And I said already, I've already been on record saying he deserves a mulligan for this year. But the mulligan is, even though the mulligan is partially his fault, and I'm not here to deny that it's partially his fault because he went all in on the Nico thing and mishandled it. I'm not saying I'm not saying you don't put him on the hot seat next year. I am saying you don't fire him regardless of what happens this year. I will say that.
You don't fire him, but he's okay. Let's define having a pass as something different. Tennessee goes 7-5 this year. How about that?
Okay.
Is he on the hot seat heading into the 2026 season?
I think hot seat, yes. I would put him on the hot seat, but I would sit there and say
that's not a pass then, because he's not gone after making the college football playoff no matter what happens this year. That's aside from the Nico situation. Having a pass to me is you go into the 2026 season and everything's copacetic despite what happens this year with no Nico. That makes sense? We're kind of on different wavelengths.
Yes. No, I get what you're saying. I think Josh Heupel. Okay, from that perspective, I think if Josh Heupel goes 8-4, he's not on the hot seat next year. How about that? If he's 8-4, he's not on the hot seat at all next year. Not even close.
7-5.
See, with 7-5, it depends on how he. I know this is weird to say, but it depends on how he went 7-5. Because you can go. There's multiple types of 7-5. Like if let
me take it a step further to describe this. Have a pass. If he goes 7-5 the next 2 seasons, is he gone?
Yes, I think he's gone if he goes 7-5 the next 2 seasons. I think if he doesn't show any signs of improvement over the next 2 seasons, he's gone.
Caleb says bank on it, 7-5, 2 back-to-back seasons, and Josh Heupel is gone. I will say that he should be, but there's no way in God's creation he will be. Bank on it. Brought to you by Commercial Bank.
Commercial Bank is your neighborhood bank. What makes us different from other banks? We understand that every customer has unique opportunities, challenges, and financial concerns. We don't expect you to fit into the same box as the next person or business. Whether it's purchasing a home, saving for your child's future, or planning for your next vacation, we're with you every step of the way to navigate life's big decisions. Commercial Bank. Life made better.
Make the argument for me that 2 7-5 seasons and Tennessee doesn't make a change, because I think you're right, but I don't think you should be right.
Okay, the argument you could make is that if, say, hypothetically, they go 7-5 this year because of the whole Nico thing, and just say that they were trying to navigate NIL waters and things changed under them and they had to adjust and they had to audible. And so that's what happened in 2025. And then the argument in 2026 would be they had a rash of injuries. Okay, that's it. But if you go 7-5 in 2026, that's it. You got to go at that point. You can't go 7-5 back-to-back years like that at this point in year 5 and 6. You just can't do that. I am a believer that at a place like Tennessee, I've already talked about expectations before. You're allowed once every 4 to 5 years a 7-5, 8-4 style season. I mean, you are allowed that, I think.
Is Kirby Smart allowed that at Georgia?
No, but Philip Fulmer was allowed it. He went 8-4 in 94. He went 8-4 in 2000, and no one ever questioned it. I mean, no one ever thought that was a problem. You're allowed a rebuilding year.
Just better bounce back.
Right. You're allowed a rebuilding year every 4 to 5 years if you bounce back the next year. Okay. That's where I'm landing with this. I think when Tennessee's rolling at their best, they're allowed a type of season like that. Because again, and we talked about this, Dave, as of right now. And again, this may change because of the NIL money and things like that. But right now, the SEC is still significantly deeper than the Big Ten. So these margins are so small and so narrow that, you know, if you're a little bit down talent-wise and you just get the bad draw of a schedule one year, you can find yourself 2 plays away from 11-1 and end up 8-4.
Derek, you got to raise your expectations, buddy. He says, I think we were looking at 8-4 or 7-5 with Nico, y'all. Ugh. Eesh. Can't do that. Ben says, if that's, I'm sorry. Ben says, Adam says 5 losses should be worst case scenario for Tennessee. Any more than that, it's time for change. I'm at 3 losses. I mean, I'm okay with Tennessee losing to Georgia and Alabama. Those programs are one's in better shape. One of the games is on the road. I can roll with that. But 4 losses, 5 losses. I mean, who's that 4th loss to?
So you're saying 4 losses is an automatic firing at any season whatsoever for a head coach?
No,
after
I
year
said
5?
5. I said 5.
Okay, 5. Okay, 5. Look, if they lost 4 games this year, it would be to Florida, Georgia, Alabama, and then either like this year it'd be tough, but I talked about yesterday, Syracuse would be the 4th to them. I mean, Kentucky wouldn't upset them, Vanderbilt wouldn't upset them, or Mississippi State wouldn't upset them.
Listen, I'll go back to what you said yesterday. If Tennessee loses to Syracuse, season is not a success. Period. In the discussion.
Even if they win out.
Well, they're not going to win out if they go set. If they
you do know Ohio State lost at home to a 6-6 Virginia Tech team the year they won the national title.
Yeah. Ben says I'm not happy with 7-5, but I'm not saying it's time to fire Heupel. 6 or 6 worse, and nobody will be happy. Bender of Strings points out there's no rebuilding in the portal era. That's a fair point. Should you have a down year? You pointed out Philip Fulmer's years. Those seasons were unacceptable in retrospect because Tennessee had more talent. They got outcoached in those particular seasons. Tennessee had more talent than probably all but 1 or 2 teams on their schedule. That's where I think Tennessee should be. And I guess that goes back to our earlier discussion of recruiting. Tennessee should be in that situation, Caleb, in which they roll the ball out there and they beat 9 out of the 12 teams they play.
Well, this year, because they play outside of the top 3, they don't have that tough of a schedule, even though I think Syracuse is the most dangerous beyond that top 3. The rest of the SEC teams they play are garbage. They play an almost Indiana schedule in the SEC this year. As far as, but like to go back to the Philip Fulmer thing, Dave, you got to think about like bad breaks though. Let's talk about the first 8-4 season Philip Fulmer had. Peyton Manning's freshman year, he lost his 2 starting quarterbacks for the year in the first 3 weeks, and then he had to go to a freshman that he didn't plan on starting at all that year.
Listen, let's take out the injury thing because obviously, I mean, if Joe Aguilar and Jake Merklinger get hurt and you're with George McIntyre, then all bets are off. You know, you just want to see McIntyre develop like Peyton Manning did as a freshman. So let's take the injury thing out. Bender of Strings said in the portal era, 9 wins should be the floor at a program like ours. More than that, we better have an epidemic of injuries. Totally agree. Less than that, he meant. Totally agree. Totally agree. That's where the expectation should be. And I'm disappointed in Tennessee fans for not having those high expectations. Just don't get.
I mean,
turning into Kentucky? Is that where we are?
No, but again, I don't think that Tennessee is at. I don't think Tennessee, even if they're rolling at their best, can match what Nick Saban did at Alabama. Well, nobody can match what Nick Saban did at Alabama. That's impossible. But I don't think they can match Kirby Smart's production at Georgia either. I mean, I don't think Tennessee's ever going to be on that level.
How many consecutive seasons did Mark Richt win 10 games?
How many consecutive seasons did Mark Richt win 10 games?
Yeah.
Let's say
to me, Mark Richt's record should be the absolute floor for Josh Heupel.
Mark Richt's best run was 4 straight years of at least 10 games from 2002 to 2005. After that, he never had more than 2 straight seasons of at least 10 wins throughout.
But didn't he have 10 win seasons altogether?
5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yes, but one of those was at Miami. But yes, he had 10 win seasons altogether.
Okay, so 9 10 win seasons at Georgia. Josh Heupel's hungry, at least he should be. Tennessee is primed. They've got the NIL money, we think, sort of maybe. They have all the facilities in place. They should go on a Mark Richt-like run at the bare minimum. Bare minimum.
But even in a Mark Richt-like run, that would fuel my argument because Mark Richt was every 4 to 5 years was good for a 4-loss season. He went 8-4 his first year. He went 9-4 in 2006. He went 8-5 in 2009, 6-7 in 2010, 8-5 in 2015.
But if South Carolina doesn't go after Kirby Smart, Mark Richt's probably still the head coach.
Yes. Georgia was very content with Mark Richt, by the way. And Mark Richt, to his credit, was a big integrity guy, so he wasn't going to make some compromises to win that Kirby Smart was willing to make to win. And by the way, I don't blame Kirby Smart for that. I mean, you do what you got to do to win. But
Derek says, ever since I've listened to you on the show, I've told you that recruiting is not there. I told you we didn't trend wildly enough with skilled players when Nico signed to produce top-tier players, top-tier results. That's true. I mean, let's face it. We should be talking about the Nico effect right now that continues at Tennessee even without him. We should be saying Nico didn't have the impact as a player, but look at the impact he had as a recruiter. Now, is that on Nico? Is that on Tennessee not taking advantage of it, Caleb?
It's a combination of the two. It's partially on Nico, but it's also partially on Tennessee not being able to take advantage of it, because to be a recruiter, Nico's got to, like we've talked about, we said this before, put up the video game numbers, and Nico didn't put up the video game numbers as a starter at Tennessee. Half of Tennessee's recruiting cell is the video game numbers, isn't it? Under Josh Heupel. And look, that is where we're not talking about, like, Tennessee's not going to recruit under Heupel the way they would have recruited under Fulmer, in the sense of they're selling a program to get you to the NFL and develop you and all that. No, what they're selling is, come play for Josh Heupel, you'll put up video game numbers. So for Josh Heupel to keep this program afloat, he's got to put up video game numbers. And by the way, Dave, I know he knows that. That's why he gets a little bit restless in games and wants to try to force things down, because he knows his selling point is letting players put up video game numbers.
Agreed. This day in Tennessee sports history is brought to you by Sports Treasures.
This day in Tennessee sports history.
It's cool, baby. It's cool.
Now you know, and knowing is half the battle. The Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun. Off the Hook Sports.
Doing a column with Nico effect, or lack thereof. That'll be on the website tomorrow. All right, so let me ask you this. What is this day in Tennessee sports history? You picked a fantastic one yesterday. It was Holly Warlick's birthday. Give us a tease as the magic video will tell everyone about Sports Treasures.
This one is another birthday, and it's a person who's a little more prominent in the Tennessee community even now, and a rival fan base may feel strongly about him too.
Okay. This day in Tennessee sports history. That's a great tease brought to you by Sports Treasures.
Sports Treasures in North Knoxville is one of the South's largest sports cards and memorabilia dealers, featuring over 10 million sports cards from vintage to modern. Sports Treasures carries a full line of hobby boxes, singles, autographed memorabilia, Tennessee Vol collectibles, fan cave decorations, and so much more. See a museum full of collectibles at Sports Treasures, 4819 North Broadway in Fountain City, and Sports Treasures on Facebook. Sports Treasures, where the real sports fan goes to shop.
Okay, whose birthday is it?
It is Eric Ainge's 39th birthday of all people.
Oh, nice.
Happy birthday to Eric Ainge. Still very common, obviously, in Knoxville radio. Managed to make Sanford Stadium way louder than it is possible of getting a couple of years ago when Tennessee visited Georgia. Also, though, we always forget, Eric Ainge went 2-0 at Georgia when he played as a football player. So I think he invokes certain feelings from Georgia fans.
Okay, let me ask you this, though, for a second. Do you really think that he affected that Georgia game?
No, I think the hype behind it affected it. Look, Tennessee was number one in the CFP. Georgia thought they should have been number one. And it was totally, by the way, you talk about the College Football Playoff Rankings Committee being a TV show. The committee put Tennessee number one for a reason. They wanted to manufacture the hype behind that game. And I mean, how many times have you covered that, Dave? Where like the polls will rank like two teams a certain way right before they're about to play, so they could sell the hype behind it. I'm sure you've seen that.
I have. I think that it's silly to think that any comment by any former Vol or any radio show host had an effect on Georgia's football players or their program. I will say I think it affected the fans a little. Now, I'll defend Eric Ainge in that he said that Georgia's not all that loud. Georgia's louder now than it was, but Georgia's a weird program. They went from complacent to complacent. So there were two different reasons. So they were a little bit complacent and bored with Mark Richt, who wasn't winning championships, but was successful enough to keep his job, right?
Correct.
Okay.
And then they just kind of transitioned to being an elite program like Alabama, and they were a little bit complacent. So the bottom line is Georgia's fan base was not all that loud. I would argue, and I haven't covered every Georgia game, I haven't watched every Georgia game, but I would argue that Georgia was the loudest on that Saturday that they've been in recent memory. Still, though, is that a scary place to play? I don't really think so. It's no scarier than South Carolina, than Auburn, than
And it's not because Georgia fans aren't as raucous. The stadium is built in a way that it's not going to trap noise on. That's just how it is.
I agree, but don't you agree that they went kind of from complacent to complacent for those two reasons?
Yes, I do agree. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think Alabama, their fans were complacent under Nick Saban.
Oh,
I
yes.
covered a lot of games with Nick Saban there that weren't that loud and weren't that scary.
Well, part of that was...
As a matter of fact, the only time that I thought it was a loud, raucous environment were the final moments when Terrence Cody blocked that ball with his boob.
Well, that they were loud that year, but the problem with Alabama in the later Nick Saban years was they were just, I mean, you would spend the whole regular season, I mean, they were jumping up 45-0 on teams in the end of the first quarter. There were periods. And it was like, I remember betting on Alabama. My dad told me this trick because you don't know if they're going to cover the spread because they just call up all the dogs in the second half. But you bet on them. That my dad was the one who taught me the trick of bet on them in the first half because Alabama was always covering the spread in the first half because they were just blowing teams out so badly.
I actually thought, and it sounds crazy now, I thought that Nick Saban's big Achilles heel would be he took his foot off the gas too soon. And I still think he did that for the first 2/3 of his career. When he hired Lane Kiffin, they started running up the score. And I don't mean running up the score in a bad way.
No, not like Steve Spurrier, who was calling timeout sometimes in the fourth quarter against Vanderbilt when they were up 71-13, but or going for it on 4th and 5.
All right, coming up, stat of the day, and Jermod McCoy or Miles Kitselman. Who does Tennessee need to get healthier sooner? We'll dive into that. That'll be hot or cold coming up. Also, what the H coming up. And this is a serious topic on what the H. We can shift gears and do that every once in a while. We like to have fun. But, man, an SEC stadium was targeted by ISIS. That's scary. Stay tuned. Off the Hook Sport.
It's a new year, a new day, and Ted Russell Lincoln has an exciting new offer to share. Right now, get a 2024 Lincoln Navigator with 0% APR for 72 months and up to $4,000 in bonus cash. Or drive away in a new 2024 Lincoln Corsair Grand Touring with 0% APR for 60 months and up to $4,500 in bonus cash. It's time to get excited about the ride. Come and see what a luxury car experience truly is at Ted Russell Lincoln Knoxville.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Newbert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Newbert Collision Center.
Having been in the jewelry industry for a long time in the Knoxville community, I saw a need for a jeweler, a real jeweler.
Our ability to do these designs has really been based on the customers bringing new things in and challenging us as a store. Our goal is not to tell anybody what they want. Our goal is to listen to what they want and then help them get there.
Schedule your consultation today to get your special someone the perfect custom gift just in time for the holidays.
Sports Treasures in North Knoxville is one of the South's largest sports cards and memorabilia dealers, featuring over 10 million sports cards from vintage to modern. Sports Treasures carries a full line of hobby boxes, singles, autographed memorabilia, Tennessee Vol collectibles, fan cave decorations, and so much more. See a museum full of collectibles at Sports Treasures, 4819 North Broadway in Fountain City, and Sports Treasures on Facebook. Sports Treasures, where the real sports fan goes to shop.
Are you ready to get strong? At NFC, we offer top-notch weight training and functional fitness, so you can build strength and improve your performance. Join today at NFC1.com or stop by any one of our 7 East Tennessee locations.
Stat of the day. They never lie. Or do they? Stat of the day. The Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun. Off the Hook Sports.
All right, stat of the day is right now, and it is brought to you
by Newbert Collision Center, where I'll be visiting today. I love the customer service. I don't like the fact that I have to visit there. What do we got for the stat of the day, Caleb?
Since we're doing this recruiting rankings talk, I just pulled it up. How many top 10 composite 247 sports recruiting classes has Tennessee had the past 10 years? Can you guess?
In the past 10 years?
Yep, 2016 through 2025.
I'm going to say 0.
1, 2023. They got 1.
What's some highlights of that class?
Nico Iamaleava.
Yeah.
So that's
Who
not.
else? Give me the next 5, 6 handful, whatever, of highest rated prospects in that class.
David Hobbs, Cam Selden, Nathan Leacock. Selden and Leacock are both gone. Shamrod Umarov, Caleb Herring, Ethan Davis, Shandavian Bradley, and Arian Carter. Jordan Matthews, who is also gone, Emmanuel McCoy, and then you get down to the 3 stars on the composites, which are like Ricky Gibson, still on the program. I mean, again, you don't have a lot of players from that class on this program. Like half of them are transferred out. I don't know exactly what the number is on how many players transfer out of programs each year now per recruiting class, but they've definitely had a lot of guys transfer out of this program from this class.
That's troublesome, kids. Just going to go ahead and tell you that's troublesome. I mean, listen, for every time, and this has been a show that's been a lot about recruiting. Every time, Caleb, that you tell me that Tennessee is getting a 3-star prospect, offering him early and plans on developing him, I'm going to tell you that Tennessee is getting a 4-star prospect that is not as good as his recruiting ranking, and he's being evaluated by nerds at these recruiting services. And the simple fact is he is not as good as his rating. So he's really more like a 3-star. I could argue that for 2 or 3 or 4 of those guys you just mentioned.
Oh, you could absolutely argue the reverse. You are right of what I've argued. And this is why I said this is Josh Heupel's strategy. I said it, and I said it's not a bad strategy. But I did say the only way the strategy works is if you properly evaluate talent. And Heupel has been hit or miss on the evaluating talent. Now, on the defensive side, I think we could agree that Willie Martinez and Tim Banks are probably better at evaluating defensive backs, particularly from the Mid-Atlantic region. Because remember, Tim Banks is from the Mid-Atlantic region. He coached at Penn State for so long. So he's very connected to Jersey kids. So I think Tim Banks probably can evaluate a kid like KJ McClain and know how good he's going to be better than a Josh Heupel can. But it is troublesome how many they've missed on. Again, the biggest one is their offensive line. They have missed on so many offensive linemen to this point.
Nope, that's true. Stat of the day brought to you by Newbert Collision Center. Fantastic customer service. You know you'll get treated fairly there. Pardon me, an institution in Knoxville, Tennessee. Say something insightful, Caleb. I'm choked up.
Here's the insightful part. Before this last 10 years, Tennessee had back-to-back top 5 classes in 2014 and 2015. That's proof that recruiting rankings are overrated. Those were not top 5 classes whatsoever.
Okay, so here we go. Hot or cold, brought to you by City Heating and Air Conditioning, cityheatandair.com. And it is this. Miles Kitselman is more valuable to Tennessee than Jermod McCoy. Are you hot or cold on that? Typically, I would never say that. Jermod McCoy is a cornerback, which is arguably the second most important position behind quarterback. Most people would say left tackle, but you could debate that with this program and the fact that they put more emphasis on a right tackle. But Miles Kitselman, hot or cold, brought to you by City Heating and Air Conditioning, is more important to this Tennessee football team than Jermod McCoy, a shutdown corner.
I think that's crazy. And I think that's crazy because Tennessee is more limited in what they can do without a shutdown corner than they are without their top tight end. Miles Kitselman is, if he's not fully ready to go, and for context, both players are hurt entering the year. Jermod McCoy is more hurt, but Miles Kitselman got hurt later, so we'll see who's more ready to be 100%. At the start of the year, they need Jermod McCoy to get up to 100% quicker than Miles Kitselman. Jermod McCoy being a shutdown corner changed everything about the defense last year. Tennessee went from 3 straight years of one of the worst defenses in college football to all of a sudden their defense winning games for them last year. And it's because of Jermod McCoy. And you can't replicate that. You don't have a tight. If Josh Heupel doesn't have a tight end, he'll go 3 wide, he'll go 4 wide and call it a day. That's fine. But also, he has a tight end that I don't think the drop-off's going to be as significant as from a shutdown corner. Can I just ask you this, Dave, for you know ball better than me, honestly. Is it on a generic sense, is it harder to replace an elite tight end or a shutdown corner? What's rarer?
Okay, let's get into that. Hot or cold, brought to you by City Heating and Air Conditioning, cityheatandair.com.
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard Heating and Air Conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
Dare to compare. It's harder to replace a corner than a tight end. And we'll get into more hot or cold factors in this debate. However, it's most difficult to replace your lone all-SEC player on offense. And I don't see another all-SEC player on Tennessee's offense.
I do.
Miles Kitselman. If you say Mike Matthews, you might just shut her down.
I am going to say Mike Matthews.
Hot or cold, Mike Matthews will be an all-SEC player. Caleb?
Hot. I'm hot. I'm hot on it.
No.
By the way, and maybe Boo Carter's an all-SEC offensive player.
No
Have we
chance.
thought of that?
He's not going to play enough. Tennessee will have an all-SEC player not named Miles Kitselman. I know what you'll say.
That's hot.
No, they're not going to. Part of the reason is because the voters don't do a good enough job. Now, the coaches may, but the voters, the media guys don't do a good enough job of evaluating first-year players. You generally have to have a good first season, then you're all-SEC headed into the next season. But that's neither here nor there. Hot or cold? And if you agree with this, say it's hot.
That's hot.
If you don't, say it's cold. Miles Kitselman's health, you feel good about him getting back this season?
Yes, I'm hot on Miles Kitselman getting healthy pretty early.
Remind us of the injury.
Miles Kitselman missed all of spring practice due to an injury he sustained. It was a pectoral injury, and he underwent surgery for it. But again,
it's a soft tissue injury. I think you generally get back from that. I think Miles Kitselman realizes this is a career year for him, or a contract year, I should say, because he's going to the NFL next year. He needs to have a big season. I think he'll be fine and good to go. Ethan Davis's ability to replace Miles Kitselman, hot or cold?
Through the roof hot.
That's hot.
And this is why I'm hotter on Tennessee. The biggest reason I think Tennessee needs Jermod McCoy back more than Miles Kitselman. Ethan Davis is a rare talent. If he's not able to replace Miles Kitselman this year, he's another bust in Tennessee's recruiting class.
I agree. I think Ethan Davis is going to be fantastic. I've said that the 2 years that he's been on campus. I'm red hot on him. He'll be very good. Jermod McCoy's health. Are you hot or cold on him being the same player he was last year?
I'm cold on that, particularly in September. I think in September specifically, he's not going to be the player, and I don't even think he'll be able to play. I don't care what they told me on how they expect him back. I think Jermod McCoy, if he does play, will not be the shutdown corner. He will have lost his step. You don't come back from a torn ACL in January at 100% by September.
I agree. It was when I was your age, and that wasn't that long ago, you just didn't come back from an ACL almost at all. Or if you did, you were never the same player. Nowadays, that injury is the Achilles, right?
Correct.
So, but I think McCoy by midseason hits his stride, but I don't think he's going to be the same player at the beginning of the season. So I'll completely roll with you there. And then Ricky Gibson III's Esquire Jr., his ability to replace McCoy.
I'm cold on that too. He's a solid cornerback, but I'm cold on his ability.
Yeah, we're talking about the McCoy of last year. I mean,
right.
McCoy's at 80%. Gibson's that good, but we're talking about the A+ that McCoy was last year. Again, hot or cold, brought to you by City Heating and Air Conditioning, cityheatandair.com.
They will absolutely treat you fair. And I've had several people reach out to me and say, this other HVAC company wanted to replace the whole unit. City came out for a couple $100 and replaced a part, and they were good to go. The last one, Caleb?
Colton Hood, Colorado transfer cornerback Colton Hood, who I think will be the #1 cornerback while Jermod McCoy is recovering from injury. I think he'll be the #1 cornerback. I'm cold on him replacing McCoy, though. I don't think he's as proven. He was the #2 cornerback at Colorado last year facing Big 12 competition, and then you have to become the #1 cornerback for a month facing SEC competition. I get what he's able to do. I just can't believe in it until I see it.
It kind of feels like when you're in the NFL and you're in the first 2 or 3 weeks and you've suffered a significant injury at a position, you go out and get a guy who's good but not great to replace him, right?
Exactly. That's exactly what it is, where you sign a guy to a temporary contract, basically. What is it in the NBA, the 10-day contract?
Yes, the 10-day contract. All right, so on a serious note, ISIS is targeted in SEC Stadium. I want to dig into that, some things that I've witnessed around SEC stadiums. Are you concerned when you go to games? Honest with you, they're considered soft targets. I mean, a soft target is anything that has, a few thousand people in it. So, if the Boston Marathon was a soft target, then there's no question that an SEC football stadium is a soft target. So we're going to dive into that on a serious topic. In 2 minutes, Off the Hook Sports, the show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com, as we broadcast from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studios, East Tennessee's largest volume dealer.
A beacon of hope in a world of high prices. Look to the skies, Knoxville. Super savings is here. Ted Russell Ford is East Tennessee's #1 volume Ford dealer. Employee pricing is here. You pay what we pay on all new Ford models. Come see the super dealer today at either Ted Russell Ford location, Parkside Drive, or Kingston Pike.
Sports Treasures in North Knoxville is one of the South's largest sports cards and memorabilia dealers, featuring over 10 million sports cards from vintage to modern. Sports Treasures carries a full line of hobby boxes, singles, autographed memorabilia, Tennessee Vol collectibles, fan cave decorations, and so much more. See a museum full of collectibles at Sports Treasures, 4819 North Broadway in Fountain City, and Sports Treasures on Facebook. Sports Treasures, where the real sports fan goes to shop.
Community banking is about location and much more. It's about family. We reside in your community. We are a part of your community. At Commercial Bank, our commitment extends beyond the walls of our branches. It's displayed each day in the opportunities we provide, the money we give back, and the time we commit, all to help improve the lives of the people, families, and businesses that make our communities great. Commercial Bank, life made better.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Newbert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Newbert Collision Center.
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
There's your fair. All SEC Center Cooper Mays here.
It's not fourth down.
Cooper Mays here.
Doing.
Hit like and subscribe.
All right, Coop. Set us up wrong. I talked to you, Coop, about saying the right thing.
And here we go.
This was a huge waste of time, like bringing a married guy to Vegas.
Then there's this guy, the Dave Hooker Show with Calhoun, represented by T. Scott Jones, banksandjones.com, Tennessee's trial attorney. From the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studio, East Tennessee's #1 volume and customer service dealer, Ted Russell Ford and TedRussellLincoln.net. Now to the Dave Hooker Show on Off the Hook Sports.
All right, Vols win, says Dave, do you think our defensive line will overachieve? Well, yes. Caleb, remind everyone who all Tennessee lost from last year's offensive or defensive line.
Omar Norman Lott, James Pierce Jr., Amari Thomas are the big three that they lost, but they also lost Elijah Simmons, who was definitely a good depth piece. So that's 4 players from the defensive line who were crucial last year that they lost.
So, Volsman, to your point, the expectations are that Tennessee's defensive line will take a tumble. So, do I like Tennessee's line to overachieve from that? Yes. I think I said offensive line again. Tennessee's defensive line. First of all, I think to some extent they underachieved last year, given their depth. But I like Dominique Bailey and Joshua Josephs at the end positions. Joseph's more like the Leo positions. I think there's some depth there. Caleb's really high on Edwin Spillman. Or I'm sorry, you're high on Caleb Herring. I misspoke there.
Somewhat, but not as high. I'm high on Jordan Ross. Is the guy I'm really high on.
I think what you need to see more than anything is continued improvement of Tyree West for depth, and then you need to see David Hobbs take a big step. And if those two things happen, then Tennessee massively overachieves. But if they just get great play by Dominique Bailey, as I mentioned, Josephs, I think Jackson Boyd is going to be really good. I think Bryson Easton is solid. If they just get the play I expect out of those 4, then they will have overachieved. If they get continued improvement from West and they get a really solid David Hobbs at tackle, and let's see about Caleb Herring as depth. Yeah, my question is, who's your 4th tackle? Because Tennessee had a 5th tackle last year in Simmons when he was healthy. Yeah, I don't know who I don't think you have a 4th tackle. I think you got Moy, Eason, Hobbs. Then you get down into the depth chart of Nathan Robinson.
Well, what we know Rodney Garner likes to do is basically, even if they're not good enough to start, he's the opposite of Rick Barnes. He's still going to play them for depth purposes. And so that's one of the big things. So I would say probably Tyree West is definitely in there. Did you say Tyree West? I didn't hear that. If you did,
yeah, continued improvement in Tyree West.
Yeah. So we're talking Moy, Eason, West.
Tyree West needs to be the Omar Norman a lot. Last year's team, just a really, really solid player. Not elite, but solid.
But I think he can be elite, though. I think he can be elite. So we'll see how that goes. But I think he can be elite.
I haven't seen that. Daniel says, Dave, so good to see you, my friend. I've been busy with the business. I've been absent for a couple of weeks. I really appreciate that. I've been going through some personal things, and your continued support means a lot. Check us out on offthesports.com, and we greatly appreciate it. There's a lot of people who disagree with you on Mike Matthews. A lot of people who say he's not proven anything. Go ahead and make your case one more time for Mike Matthews will be an All-SEC.
Mike Matthews was buried in the depth chart last year because Josh Heupel went for the experienced receivers, the Rue McCoys, the Squirrel Whites, the Dante Thorntons, and then the Chris Brazzle's transferring from Tulane. But all of them except Brazzle were banged up in some way. Rue McCoy is coming back from an injury. So Mike Matthews was buried in the depth chart last year. This was always supposed to be the year for him to explode. I think he will explode now. I think he will do a lot more than Rue McCoy was able to do last year in that role because he's significantly faster. And I also think that reports were in spring practice, he was unguardable. Let's just put that out there.
Okay. I want to discuss something tomorrow. And I'll write a column on this as well. Is Josh Heupel too much of a player's coach? Because I think he played Rue McCoy in hopes that McCoy could salvage his professional career, which obviously wasn't the case. And he lacked the explosiveness that he had before. He wasn't the same player because of the injury, and he should have gone with Mike Matthews. I don't want to get too far into it right now. We'll do that tomorrow because I'll give you some insight of why he's not too much of a player's coach tomorrow. So be sure and tune into the program weekdays at 10 a.m. with Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. All right, a serious note here. An ISIS supporter eyed the University of Oklahoma's stadium for a terrorist attack. Should this be a concern? I think it absolutely should always be a concern for administrators, Caleb. But I'll tell you this story is one time I was with my family and I was in the press box and I was writing and we had to wait until I was done. So previously, when I wrote for the News Sentinel, there was a group of people, and we would all read each other's copy. So we didn't get out of the press box except for night games when we were on deadline, maybe 2 hours after the game, Caleb, because we wanted all the copy to be clean. But in this particular instance, it took me about 45 minutes to write my column. It was an easy one. It was the one where Cam Sutton saved the game with an interception late. Do you remember which game that is?
I'm not sure which game that was.
They were about to get upset by a lesser opponent.
Maybe South Alabama.
Yeah, that's what it was. And because Cam took a picture with my son Tram, Cam Tram. That's cool. But I remember leaving, and there were snipers that left the stadium. I never knew there were snipers. I bet you didn't know there were snipers. So I don't think that fans should be overly concerned about ISIS or any other terrorist attack. I think that administrators had better continue to be vigilant because let's face it, I mean, these things happen less often. And God, I pray we never see anything as massively destructive as 9/11. But Caleb, those people are still out there, and those people are still trying to do stuff. And I would say this: if you go to a football game regularly, see something, say something, is the old saying. If you see something curious, say something. Caleb?
Yeah, it's so this guy, his name was Landon Kyle Swinford. He's facing some other charges right now, and this stuff came out during these other charges. But he was texting an undercover officer while he was at a game with his grandparents, of all people, back in September of 2023. The officer was posing as an ISIS supporter and said they met earlier to see if Swinford was for real. Swinford texted the officer saying he had picked a target in New Orleans, a voodoo temple, which he was going to do some attacking on, but he was scouting Oklahoma's football stadium for one. Now, all of this comes down to, here's the interesting thing about this, that this news came. One of the reasons I'm glad this news broke is everybody likes to criticize like failures of institutions when they come up short, and they should be. Like, when 9/11 happened, it was very fair to criticize the TSA and whoever else was involved that did not do their jobs to prevent it, because there were about 5 different ways that thing could have been prevented when it happened. And it is very fair to call hearings, fire people who didn't come forward and everything like that. But what I don't like is then we don't see all the times the FBI or whoever stops potential attacks, and we don't see their value. And this is like, guys, what this Oklahoma thing, this happens on the regular, and the FBI and whoever else, they root them out regularly. And this is just one we found out. It's scarier at some of these stadiums that are so old. And you know this, Dave. I mean, Neyland is this way. They try their best to keep it up to code with new code policies and building code policies and evacuation policies and things like that. But it's borderline impossible to do in certain ways. And I remember, I mean, let's just think of something like if there was a tornado at Neyland Stadium and everybody had to go below, they would be stuck walking in the stands, getting out and trying to do something like that. If there's a fire in the stadium, you know how, I mean, you get stuck in the stands. It was just too narrow for a long period of time to try to get out. Mm-hmm. And it was like person to person, and you were slowly walking. And so I think that there is a lot of, I think there needs to be a lot more, particularly with college football, analysis of some of these stadiums, as opposed to the race to everybody getting 100,000 or 110,000 or 120,000. I would say college football venues are jumping into that a lot of times without paying attention to safety features that are really important with these stadiums.
Daniel says, every time I'm in Neyland, it's on my mind. Then I see those people posted on top of the overhang to keep fans off. That's true. Justin says, I trust our boys, girls in blue. I agree with you when it comes to Neyland. I don't think that SEC stadiums or fans in those stadiums should be that concerned. My concern is the smaller stadiums that seat, the Division II stadiums that may seat 25,000 or so, and they don't have the same resources to have the same type of security. That's always been my concern, Caleb, is those type of stadiums. To some extent, Vanderbilt. Now, Vanderbilt's building its program. They've redone the stadium. I assume that they've upped security as they become more pertinent, but those type of venues are my bigger concern.
I wonder if, like, if you think about this with like ISIS supporters, how much does ISIS know about like athletics in the nation and then college athletics? Do they go all the way as far as down as to think of Division II though? You know what I mean? You might be right. Maybe they do.
Well, I would have never thought of the Boston Marathon of being a significant target. I mean, there were only, a couple of thousand people at the finish line.
Yeah, no, that's true. That's true. And
I want to echo something you said of our boys and girls in blue and those people that are in charge of security. Maybe they dropped the ball in 9/11, but I watched a documentary on the Boston Marathon bombers, and they had more targets in mind, but they were caught so quickly that they didn't have a chance to take advantage of all the scouting they had done. And sure, they got away with that one, but they didn't get away with anything more. And I think for the most part, our country's in a much better position to handle these sorts of things, both on the front end before it happens and after it happens, so that people don't get away. And I think it's obvious that our country was caught with their pants down a little bit because 9/11 happened in the first place. But then it took a decade to find all those that were responsible for it. Shouldn't have taken that long. Spies should have been more what's the word I'm looking for? Spies should have been more involved or more brained. What's the word I'm looking for?
Well, I mean,
we should have been able to find out who that was and get them.
Well, we knew who they were. The question was, where were they hiding? And it turned out, Osama bin Laden was hiding in a mansion, like 5 miles from the Pakistani army. So everybody should have known it. The problem is when you go after some of these targets, even if you know who they are, there's geopolitical issues with where they're hiding and things like that make it much more complicated. Excuse me. But yeah, that's what they never talk about the attacks you always hear about the attacks that happen. You never hear about the attacks that didn't happen. You know what I mean? So
I completely agree.
Yeah. And so this is, I'm glad this story is out because it lets people know, this is the good work that a lot of people do in government where you don't hear about, you always hear about their failures, but when the successes happen, when they do things to keep things running as they should, you never hear about it. No one reports the plane that landed safely.
It's a 30 to 45 second brief on the news, if that.
Yeah, exactly.
And for those that don't know about news stacking, like we do, our biggest topic is at the front end, and then you play it down. It befuddles me that a lot of times I'll say, "Oh, ISIS had an attack planned here," and it's at the 24-minute mark after the third commercial break, and it's 45 seconds long.
Yeah, exactly.
Or shorter,
exactly.
Sometimes 20 seconds. And I'm like, this could have killed hundreds of people.
Yeah, they're never going to report that thing. But if they pull it off, it's going to be at the top of the block. You're right. That's actually one of the interesting things where sports media works better than news media because sports media, if a team does what they're supposed to do, we cover that, don't we? We're like, hey, that team won a game it was supposed to win, and we cover the fact that they won that game as much as we would cover it if they lose.
Yeah, but we also talk about potential negatives. We've done so a lot this show.
But we talk about the positives as much as the negatives. We're talking about red flags on Josh Heupel's recruiting, but guess what? If Josh Heupel was getting top 5 classes, we'd be talking about that too, at the same level.
Yeah. Now I'm with Derek on this, and Caleb, I'll let you defend yourself because you defended the fact that it took a decade to get Osama bin Laden. Osama got an interview with CNN and the K, but our military couldn't find him. Okay,
I can't.
Daniel says you're absolutely right, Derek.
I can't get into that without getting political, though, because maybe if we didn't waste resources in Iraq for 10 years, where that had nothing to do with 9/11, that wouldn't have been a thing.
But my point is, we should have known more about where Osama was and how to get him. I mean, that didn't take thousands and tens of thousands of troops. That took
special forces. Oh, I think we had a lot of long story short, this is a geopolitical thing where the U.S. government had some suspicions about him hiding where he was hiding, but they had an unhealthy alliance with the Pakistani government and they didn't want to upset the Pakistani government. And so there's a lot of things going on because the Pakistani government, it's like the world headache because they have nuclear weapons, but they also have a significant portion of radical extremists who live in their area. So if the government falls and the nuclear weapons get into the hands of radical extremists, well, then the whole world's going to blow up. So
here's the other thing. You don't arm Afghanistan and teach them how to attack people, and then the whole country's wiped out, and you don't help rebuild some schools and rebuild things. Have you seen Charlie Wilson's War?
No, but I know Charlie Wilson's War. But I know about the story behind it. Yeah.
They don't even say the word 9/11 in the movie, but they lay the foundation where you know what happened.
Oh yeah, I mean, the whole 1980s to win the Cold War, we propped up radical extremist groups and armed them and gave them guns and weapons. And I'm like, yeah, that again, that's going way down. I didn't want to go down the geopolitical rabbit hole, but that's why Osama bin Laden wasn't called. Basically.
He's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker, the show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. As always, we broadcast at 10 a.m. live, but you can catch it anytime wherever you podcast from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studios, East Tennessee's largest volume dealer, Ted Russell Ford Lincoln.